Okay? Stop it. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're about to type in the comments.
Oh wow, P3R was so beloved upon release, but now it's cool to hate on the thing everyone likes. You can't be allowed to like the new thing anymore.
No! Not only would I say Persona 3 Reload is my preferred version of P3, not only did I give it high remarks on my almost 2-year-old review, but I started working on the script for this video during the review period. So ha! I always thought Reload's anime scenes were a downgrade. Eat that, you blue-haired liberals! Okay, for real though, listen, I know Persona 3 Reload is contentious. I know some people can be hyperbolic with their criticisms. But from the second I booted this remake up, I thought it left an egregious first impression due to its incredibly bland take on what I think is one of, if not the best opening to a Persona game. And unfortunately, as the game went on, I found that it wasn't just the opening that sucked. Sure, there were some good ones in there, but I repeatedly found myself questioning the decisions and intent of the animators. This is something I've wanted to talk about for a long time, so could you just hear me out, please? Spoilers, by the way, I'm not talking about every scene, but everything in the game is free game. But first, a word from friend of the channel, FiGGYZ. We've finally come back around to a brand new wave of Persona 5 figgies, and this time we've got Ryuji, Yusuke, and Makoto, getting us ever so closer to the full Phantom Thieves roster. And while P5 might be getting the love right now, there's already confirmation of a second wave of Persona 3 Reload figgies, and Catherine Full Body getting the spotlight later this month. And of course, this all goes beyond just Atlas, as you can find Castlevania, Mega Man, both modern and classic Sonic, and so many more franchises in the form of figgies. Make sure to click the link in the description or use code Macca to save 5% off any order over $50. Combine that with the automatic 5% discount for orders over $40, and that's 10% off your whole order. Thank you to FiGGYZ, and now on with the video. Before I really get into it, I want to establish two things. One, Persona 3 Reload is intended to be a good faith recreation of the original game. In an interview with IGN, when explaining why it was decided to initially exclude the answer, Chief Director Kazuhisa Wada said,
"So the basic concept of recreating the Persona story was that we wanted to keep everything from the original version, but update everything to the modern day."
In that same interview, producer Ryota Nitsuma said,
"We wanted to really genuinely work on recreating the Persona 3 experience.
It's the reason why none of the P3 portable content was included, and why the answer was only added as DLC down the line. 2. To me, the most important part of any project that aims to faithfully remake, remaster, or even reimagine a previously existing work, maintaining the spirit. Whether it's the Resident Evil 4 remake or Metal Gear Solid Delta, unless the point of the project is to go into the exact opposite direction of the original, you need to make sure the same spirit is there. To look at the intent behind the original work and aim to recreate that feeling, either by accurate emulation or by a new interpretation that arrives at the same conclusion. To recreate not what literally happened, but to understand the purpose behind its inclusion, the feelings invoked, and the desire of the original creators. To understand the reason why it was executed the way it was. Now, to be fair, sometimes it's not always clear what the intent was. David Lynch famously didn't want to tell anyone the intent behind his projects because he wanted everyone to come to their own conclusions. When this is the case, I still think it's important for those helming the project to at least try to emulate the original intent, whatever they think that intent may be. Whether they succeed will depend on the person, but I at least want to see an honest-to-goodness attempt. And it's with that, we lead into what is, to me, the biggest victim of Reload. No, not that opening cutscene. This opening cutscene. The one that plays after you hit new game. The original Prelude is, in my opinion, the best opening in a Persona game for a multitude of reasons. It's eerie, anxiety-inducing, and loud. The hustle and bustle of the city is a lot to take in. The sound of the people, the sound of the trains, the sounds of the arcade and shops nearby, and a deep buzzing coming from the technology surrounding Makoto underscoring it all. It's so loud, one could even struggle to think straight. Makoto drowns out the noise with his music. The song he's listening to, Burn My Dread, gets louder as the sequence goes on, blocking everything out. The only thing coming close to it in volume is the sound of the water running from the faucet and Yukari's panicked cries, attempting to drown out her thoughts and work up the courage to put the gun in her hand to her head and pull the trigger. We cut back and forth from Makoto, Yukari, and the world surrounding them. Many of the shots we see are close-ups and or absolutely cluttered with people, things, flashing lights, etc. This shot in particular is incredibly confusing to look at, being at what I can only describe as a simultaneous 70-degree angle and a 250-degree angle. Did you notice the shot of 3 slobbering dogs all dressed up by their equally garish owner? It's all so confusing and disorienting, throwing a million images at you and giving you no time to process any of it. The farther away from our 2 main characters, the quieter their methods of distraction become, only for it to hard cut right back to them and the volume is even louder. The editing becomes more frantic, cutting back and forth between our characters and the world. The music gets louder, the water gets louder, but the hum of the world can't be stopped. They're overlapping, one and the same. It's intense, overwhelming. You're begging for it to stop. Let me think. I don't know what's happening. All I did was start a new game. Make it stop. Please make it stop. Make it stop. Make it stop. Make it stop.
Man's man, no man ever survived. Invisible hands are behind you just now. If you ever been that race against rage, then you became cause it.
But Yukari can't do it. She lets go of the gun, yet the anxiety won't go away. All you're left with is the image of a failed suicide and the music drowning it out like the water from the faucet. You don't know who these people are and can barely understand what you're being shown. All you can make out is the feeling of being overwhelmed and the desire to escape. Before the game even begins to establish its story, the tone and theme has been established. Anxiety, death, dread. This scene is an assault on the senses that forces you to understand the game on an emotional level, even if you don't understand a single thing about its narrative. Makoto boards a train. It's the first time you can truly catch your breath and process your surroundings. The music dies, and all you're left with is the sound of the train and an apology over the intercom. It's almost like the game itself is apologizing for its intensity up till now. As the next stop is announced over the intercom, the world is once again overridden by Makoto's MP3 player. As it does, we cut to a butterfly. Seeing as Burn My Dread is being used by Makoto to drown out the world around him, I personally like to think of this cut to the insect as a glimpse into his subconscious, the music becoming its soundtrack. Seasoned fans know this butterfly to be Philemon, the master of the Velvet Room, and the one who grants personas to those deemed worthy, foreshadowing the eventual awakening of Thanatos and Orpheus. I like to think that my interpretation of this being a glimpse into Makoto's head further strengthens this foreshadowing. The idea of Makoto escaping into his own mind by using his music coincides with a shot of what is, in effect, a god of the psyche. He leaves the station, every shot fading to black before fading back in, much akin to the world fading into the night and fading again into the dark hour. The echoes of Makoto's footsteps convey the emptiness of the dark hour, the lack of lights, the lack of people, and an abundance of coffins lit green with the moon. The camera angles are traditional, yet there's a different kind of uneasiness to it. Arriving at the dorm, Makoto removes his headphones,
to find the only other person to appear in this strange hour, a young boy. With a snap, the boy instantaneously moves from behind the desk to in front of Makoto. He moves with the cutscene itself, changing locations as it cuts from one shot to the next. It's quiet, eerie, unsettling. God. I don't even know what else to say. This whole sequence is just great. So, how does Reload handle this same material? Well, to start, the color of the moon is much more yellow than the original, while also being covered up by clouds partially the entire time, which personally weakens its impact. The original moon is much more striking, the clouds moving out of the way to let it shine directly into your eyes like a bright white light illuminating the darkness before fading into the lights on a billboard advertising multiple products, drawing a connecting line between the moon and the overwhelming anxieties of everyday life that demand your attention. Reload draws this connection by transitioning into a film strip and then into a crosswalk? Why? When was film ever a thing in P3? There's a movie theater in game you can go to? There's the P3 movie quadrilogy? Is it technically because we're watching a video? I'm trying to come up with an interpretation for this, but I can't find one that works for me. Is it supposed to be like the light bulb on a film projector, the game to follow being the movie we're watching? But what does that add? I just don't see the justification behind the addition of this allusion to film, especially when it muddles the connection between the moon and everyday life. The next thing I notice is that practically every shot is much farther away with plenty of breathing room in comparison to the original. This bag still has accessories, but now they've gone from a creepy cute aesthetic to just cute. The dogs are still here, but they're not wearing these crazy insane outfits, and instead are just wearing like colorful jackets. Their owner is also greatly toned down, going from an Obitarian type to a middle-aged woman who wears kind of weird clothing. Burn My Dread this time around is purely diegetic and is no longer really a part of the scene outside of simply being the music Makoto is listening to. You only hear it when the camera gets close to him. Then, out of nowhere, we randomly cut to Yukari, with her part of the scene playing out over the course of 20 uninterrupted seconds. There's no running faucet. Instead, there's only this non-diegetic thundering and piercing ringing to create tension. This tension is then undercut by the speed of the scene, presenting it all so dryly and matter-of-factly. There's some slight blurring at the beginning and some camera movement as we get closer, but I frankly feel very little. Rather than dragging it out and making the viewer uncomfortable watching this girl they know nothing about seemingly try to kill herself, it feels like they're just trying to hit the key moments just to get it over with. Throw in some sound effects to make it tense. Meanwhile, Makoto's side of the sequence is completely devoid of any emotion whatsoever. While the original wove the two sequences together, telling two stories that resonate thematically and emotionally. Here, it seems like they're just trying to go for more of a contrast between Makoto walking through the city and Yukari trying to shoot herself in the head. Like, Yukari trying to kill herself is meant to be a jarring interruption of what is an otherwise regular day. It ends up saying nothing about the world they inhabit. Not only that, but it ends up saying nothing about Makoto. Despite being a self-insert protagonist, Makoto Yuki is still one informed by trauma and tragedy. By drawing a connection between him and Yukari, we end up gaining some kind of understanding of him, that there might be something darker going on with this guy than it seems. Cutting back to the train feels just as emotionless. It's less of a moment to breathe and more of a return to normalcy, to how things were before Yukari ruined it all with her attempt on her life, the selfish bitch. Makoto leaving the station, I think, could be effective at instilling a sense of loneliness, but the lack of emotional intrigue up to this point hampers it. What follows is easily the biggest change between the original P3 and Reload. The walk to the dorm is now playable. This is one change that I have some mixed feelings on, but ultimately I do like it. On the plus side, I think letting the player experience the Dark Hour themselves is a great idea. Being able to explore at your own pace and really see for yourself what this phenomenon does is very different than simply being shown a few pictures in a scene. On the other hand, there are certain shots from the original animated version that feel so iconic to me. The pan up from the street to the moon sticks out in my mind whenever I think of the Dark Hour. It's somewhat replicated in Reload by using it for the title drop once Makoto arrives at the dorm, but it just doesn't serve the same purpose. The original draws a direct connection between the Dark Hour and the moon, the camera seamlessly tilting from one to the other. Reload has the camera pedestal up through the clouds quickly so it can reveal the game's title. The connection just doesn't feel as strong. This isn't to say I dislike the title drop, just that I do mourn the loss of a shot so iconic it was replicated in the anime cutscene-less Persona 3 Portable, and eventually in the very poorly remastered Persona 3 Portable HD. I especially mourn the loss of this line of artifacting. Once inside the dorm, Makoto comes across Pharos. For the most part, this scene plays out okay in Engine, but it's weirdly inconsistent with how it translated Pharos' jumps. Like the original, he snaps and moves around the room alongside the camera as it cuts. However, he then dissipates into smoke before reappearing with the next camera cut 3 feet over. I don't really understand why it was done this way. Aside from that, this scene suffers from the same problems as the rest of the intro. Shot composition is infinitely worse, the tone and emotions are greatly hampered, and the entire thing just lacks the impact. I do want to give it some slack because all of this is a direct result of no longer being animated the same way, but that still doesn't mean it hasn't lost something. Wow, 4.5 pages in, and 3 of them are exclusively talking about the one scene. I wonder if there's another scene that can evoke similar feelings, but without being as long. While the opening scene, I think, is the biggest victim of Reload, without a doubt, the scene that makes me the most upset is what Reload did to the proper introduction of the Dark Hour. I have less to say overall about the original, but Reload does such a massive disservice to what is otherwise an integral sequence. One that shows you exactly what's at stake while furthering the mystery of the Dark Hour. I just gave the introduction of Pharos some slack for being in Engine, but I certainly will not be giving it here. Much like the original opening, the original version of this scene is claustrophobic and uncomfortable. A student surrounded by others, music blaring in his ears. Except this time, it's not his music, it's theirs. It belongs to these guys over here, forcing him to listen to it whether he likes it or not. The music is no longer an escape, it's an assault. And he can't leave until the crowd imprisoning him lets him. The student, tired and annoyed, is dragged into the Dark Hour. Surrounded by the coffins that were once his jailers, he is unable to handle what he's seeing. Black goo seeps from his head, its source unknown. Not a single word is uttered, only the screams from his growing helplessness before falling over, head popping against the ground. Once again, Reload's version of this scene is so much more spacious. Everyone sits in their own little bubble with plenty of room between them. While on the PS2, the student is only ever freed from the crowd around him after they decide to leave, here, there's nothing to lock him in place. That sense of claustrophobia is just completely absent. The ownership of the radio is now much more confusing too. In the original, the radio is only ever shown in this one specific close-up of its speaker, the implication being that one of these two gentlemen own it, playing it in a crowded area with little care for what others might think of it. While it can be heard, the radio is nowhere near the student. Now, not only is the radio right next to him, but the student is actively referred to as man listening to the radio. The natural conclusion is that he is the owner of the radio, which, if that's the case, removes a key element of why the student is so frustrated with his surroundings. If he doesn't own it, then why the hell is it right next to him? Why is no one else remotely close to it? If you still want to imply that someone else owns it, why not put it next to this guy in the purple shirt? Or the dude in the jacket who's just up the steps? Somewhere that maintains the idea that this kid is being forced to listen to someone else's obnoxious music. While I like how the kid in the original scene doesn't say anything, I'm not against having him talk. Considering this scene is now being told in engine and thus can be hard to replicate a lot of the nuances of the original, having him express himself could be a good way of getting across his mood. Except all he says is, "This sucks." What sucks? He's hunched over, looks dejected, and he sounds depressed. Is he sad? Did something happen before this scene? Is he annoyed with the people surrounding him? He's not exactly boxed in like he was on the PS2, so it should be easy for him to just get up and walk away. Does he not enjoy the music he's listening to? If so, why are you sitting next to the radio? If it's his radio, change the station. Unless the intent was to change what this guy was feeling in this scene, this sucks at conveying what it's supposed to. Also, the black goo leaking from his head looks like shit. Is this really the best you can do in engine? Nothing else that could have been done here. What was it about this scene that made Atlas think it could be done like this? I know that to some of you watching, this scene is probably super unimportant and that I'm just nitpicking, but I genuinely believe this is one of the most important scenes in the beginning of the game. It parallels the opening by surrounding the student with a lot of the same factors: music, technology, and people. It connects these things to the dark hour, which in this situation is a metaphor for a desire to escape and death. And what happens when an average person gets dragged into the dark hour? He dies! It shows you exactly what makes the dark hour so dangerous to the average person. Why it's not just something S.E.E.S could use to get an extra hour of sleep every night. And not only does it now look like shit, but I'm left genuinely questioning the basics of it, such as, who owns this fucking radio? Now then, I don't have enough time nor the energy to go through every anime scene, so I'm just gonna shoot off some rapid fire thoughts. Gekkokan High School. The scene with the wonky shot of Yukari that people love to use to shit on the original anime scenes, preferring to focus on the quality of this singular drawing instead of the parts that actually matter. Yes, being on model is important, but people can be so focused on the technical aspects of art that they lose focus of the goal. You can prefer P3R's versions of events, but if you were to tell me that this introductory shot of Gekkokan High School, one in which the most important location in the entire game is blown out by the lighting to the point of it blending into the clouds behind it, alongside the center of focus being on a cute girl and not the place you're supposed to be seeing for the first time, better serves the narrative than the shot emphasizing the towering nature of the building, foreshadowing its transformation into Tartarus, and the structure on top directing your attention to the most important symbol in the entire game, I'm gonna have to say, I disagree. The protagonist's awakening. At first, I was actually pretty annoyed by this scene, but with time, I've come around on it in ways. I still think it has glaring flaws, but I appreciate it for what it does right. I love the dynamic and fluid animation, not to mention some really interesting shot composition. The one shot of the shadow turning away from Makoto to continue attacking Yukari for some reason, I really like. They also changed the line from "Thou art I and I am thou" to "I am thou and thou art I." I have nothing to say other than I vastly prefer this order. It flows way better. The main problem to me is how bad Thanatos emerging out of Orpheus looks. The original looks painful, the body contorting in uncomfortable ways before bursting open. Now, not only does the body look like someone dragging a ragdoll around in Gmod, but there's this ugly motion blur smeared all over it. Overall, I just think this version lacks the same weight and impact. Not to say there's no weight or impact, just that this feels like a dull knife in comparison. The original was fast and unrelenting, whereas here it's a lot slower and clunkier. The shadow, I think, is a great example of this, as its detached limbs lashing about is just so much wimpier when you compare it to the PS2 scene. Tartarus. This is the first scene that I think is actually just better. Showing the school building grow and morph into Tartarus is creepy and satisfying to watch. Windows dividing like cells, the left side of the clock face misaligning as it slips down, the gears spinning like the entire school is just a fancy toy. It's artificial, yet organic at the same time. The original, meanwhile, just feels a lot more limited, the pieces of the tower shifting around each other as opposed to being an actual transformation. The Kirijo Group's experiments. Holy shit, what a downgrade. The original is creepy. Everything is presented like it's a 1940s documentary of an old, fucked up experiment that the government covered up. Like some MK Ultra type shit. The shot of Mitsuru's grandfather fading into the darkness that transitions into her hair, as if everything we're being shown is Mitsuru drudging up disturbing memories of actual videotapes of the incident that she's seen. The horrors of these videos weighing deeply on her consciousness and dragging her into the darkness. It's great. Reload, meanwhile, is much more sterile in its approach. Like it's just putting things on screen to show us and not really caring to think about the presentation itself. I like the transition from footage to a physical photograph, but that's it. The trip to Yakushima. The key difference between these two versions of the scene is who is excited for the trip. In Reload, everyone but Mitsuru is excited about the trip, while in the original, everyone but Junpei is incredibly somber, still reeling from the recent revelations. The trip starts off awkward and uncomfortable, while also highlighting how Junpei just sees this all as a game, as he himself just isn't impacted by anything he's learned. One theory I have is that Reload wanted to depict the now upbeat cast as trying to cope, particularly with Yukari. If this was the intent, I don't think it was communicated well enough. Meeting Aigis. Another win for Reload! The new version of the scene is definitely my preferred version, though I do think there's merit to the original. The PS2 version is much quieter and downplayed, going for a less is more approach that I do think works, but stumbles for me due to its incredibly short length. Reload, meanwhile, plays up the reveal a lot more, putting a greater sense of mystery, mystique, and importance to the reveal of Aigis, all the while giving the scene the room to breathe and stick with the player. And now we come to the last big scene I really wanted to focus on. The two versions of this pivotal moment are actually more similar than they are different, but there's one key difference that really separates them. In the original, the focus is put squarely on Ken and Shinji, and how this moment is affecting them specifically. Everyone else is still affected, but they are secondary to these two, as if they're the only people to exist in the world at this moment. In Reload, there's more focus put on the rest of the party's reaction, particularly Mitsuru and Akihiko. Not only does the camera cut away to their reactions when it previously didn't, but Akihiko now holds Shinji as he lays there dying, even grabbing his hand as his friend goes limp. Ultimately, I'm of two minds on this slight shifting of focus. By predominantly featuring Ken and Shinji, the original P3 is putting the focus squarely on Ken's development and how his actions have led to the loss of life. While he has experienced loss before, this is the first time he himself is responsible for it, albeit indirectly through the creation of the situation. Shinji's words send Ken spiraling as they clash with how Ken had imagined the moment would go. As the man he wanted dead lays there dying, Ken finds he is more concerned with his would-be killer's safety and how this moment will change him for the rest of his life. Even as they're surrounded by their teammates, it's as if the only people who exist in this moment are Shinji and Ken. By including Akihiko and Mitsuru, I can't help but feel a good chunk of that intimacy is lost. That the full weight of Ken's actions just doesn't hit as hard as it comes crashing down on him. However, Akihiko and Mitsuru are literally Shinjiro's oldest friends. The three of them were the ones to start all of this in the first place. Of course they should be included in his dying moments. This scene is still very important to their character arcs, even if Ken is the one who benefits the most. Putting some focus on them makes their eventual ultimate persona awakening hit that much harder as well. I think my ideal version of events would be a mix of these two scenes. While I think the 3D anime scenes generally look good, I would prefer to keep this one 2D, or at the very least incorporate more of the elements of the original that makes this moment so much more dizzying and lonely. The rapid camera movements, the blurred vision, the backgrounds that make Ken and Shinji feel isolated together. Then, once Shinji asks Akihiko to watch over Ken, start to incorporate shots and reactions from him and Mitsuru, followed by everyone else's reaction upon his death. Both versions of the scene have their pros and cons, but if there were one thing from either version I would just throw out the window, it would be Koromaru howling. I'm sorry, I love Koromaru. This is so manipulative. Him howling right as Ken is crying and screaming. Oh no, the dog is sad. Like I'm sorry. It comes off so manipulative and corny. Well, there we go. A video 2 years in the making, technically, finally done. For the longest time, I was sitting on this script so that I wouldn't come off like I was hating on the new popular thing, you know, old good, new bad, that kind of stuff. However, I ended up waiting so long that I ended up just not doing anything with it. Half-finished notes, the beginnings of a script, and my mind on other projects. What ended up revitalizing my desire to return to this was actually a dumb Twitter argument I saw people having over the photo. You know, the one after they think they've won, so they throw a big party and take a group photo that Junpei ruins. Seeing everyone flare up and yell at each other, it just kind of got me inspired again, even if this scene wasn't one of the ones I was really passionate about. I didn't have an opinion one way or the other, both versions worked. But then I sat there and I thought about it, and I realized something. The people who preferred the original said they did so because it was more charming and it had more soul to them than Reload's. While those who prefer Reload shat on the original because it wasn't as technically impressive. And I was just left there thinking, the whole point of the photo is that it looks like shit. Junpei is falling over, Koromaru is freaking out, and no one is looking at the camera. Meanwhile, the new version is so clean, it's practically perfect despite it supposedly being botched. Everyone still looks so perfect and beautiful despite the fact that this is supposed to be a messy moment. It's like the devs understood the point of the shot, but were too scared of anything looking less than ideal. What are supposed to be flaws are treated like quirks. Rather than coming off as something real, it comes off as manufactured. Even if unintentional, the flaws of the original end up enhancing the intent of the scene. Life isn't perfect. It's messy. Sometimes the world doesn't go the way you want it to, and it leads to imperfect memories. But sometimes those imperfect memories end up being the ones that mean the most. And frankly, I think that's exactly my problem with Persona 3 Reload's anime scenes. They're too clean, too beautiful, too perfect. They sanded off all of the rough edges, and as a result, created something bland, boring, and unambitious. The whole point of Persona 3's development was to be experimental and different, to try new things and see what worked in the hopes that it could save the company. As a result, there were a ton of things that don't work about it. But it also became one of the most important releases in the company's history. One of the biggest criticisms of Reload is that the game is so polished, so perfected, that it winds up feeling like a sterilized version of what came before. That Atlus took a game noted for being different and weird and made it standard and stock. Personally, I don't agree. I think as a game, I vastly prefer Reload, though I do still miss certain mechanics that were left out of the remake. However, when it comes to the anime scenes, whether they be 2D, 3D, or in-engine recreations, I find that outside of 2 or 3 scenes, they at best match the PS2 version, or at worst, betray the spirit of what made the original so unique and memorable in the first place. Sure, the Reload ones are more consistently on model, but sometimes the best moments in life are the ones that are ugly as sin. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of my next upload. If you want to help support the channel, there are 3 main ways to do it. First, check out FiGGYZ, and make sure to use either the link in the description below, or use code Macca at checkout so they know I sent you. Second, check out my Patreon, or become a channel member. Normally I upload videos on Fridays, but I usually have them ready to go days in advance. Both my patrons and channel members get early access to new videos the second I upload them, for as little as $1 a month. So if you want to check them early, you know what to do. And finally, third, tell me what you think of Reload's anime scenes in the comments below. Do you agree? Disagree? Do you think I'm nitpicking, or that I'm onto something? Obviously, the engagement helps me out, but I do genuinely want to hear what people have to say. I'm sure there's a lot that you probably thought of that I haven't. You all have a wonderful day. I'm gonna go figure out what video to do next, because this was genuinely the last thing I had planned for the immediate future. Oh, hey, a message from Spencer. Huh. I'm stealing this.